Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to Military Movie Talk. And today, I want to talk about the Rangers. No, not those Rangers. No, not those Rangers. Those Rangers. Or more specifically, the Rangers of World War II and their less known exploits in the Pacific Theater of Operations. As enjoyers of military history, we all know about the Rangers' D-Day assault of Point du Hoc and the adventures of Ranger Captain Tom Hanks. But it's high time more attention be given to the missions they accomplished in the Pacific. And as you know, after all, you clicked on the video, we're going to be doing that through the lens of the 2005 box office massacre, The Great Raid. Fear not, my fellow enjoyers of on screen violence. I'm bringing this film to your attention because more attention is exactly what it deserves. Not only because the movie itself is pretty good, but because of the fact that the story of these men's sacrifice is not more widely known is damn near criminal. And this exploration is my tiny attempt to begin to rectify that. We will begin doing this by examining the on screen portrayal of the raid, and then deciding if we would have conducted the mission any different than from what is shown in the movie. Now, with that said, please keep in mind that this is still military movie talk, and our conversation is going to be limited to the film. I highly encourage you to go look up the history for yourself. And also, please remember that if I levy any criticism or make any bad jokes, those are all directed at the movie characters and not the real heroes that inspired this movie. Okay? Are we good? Good. At the chime, you can turn the page and follow along with me. The scenario. In late 1941, the Empire of Japan launches a surprise attack on multiple U.S. military bases throughout the Pacific, including the Philippine Islands. Not cool, Japan. Not cool. As a result, thousands of U.S. service members are captured and hauled off to prison camps in what would come to be known as the Bataan Death March. After several years of trading blows, both on land and at sea, America gains an undisputed advantage and moves to retake the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur, after making a hasty retreat, now has the opportunity to keep the promise to the men he left behind when he told them, "I shall return." I'm sorry, I seem to have turned MacArthur into Mr. Krabs.
Mr. Krabs, are we gonna retake the Philippines?
Oi, me boy, we're gonna kick the Japanese back to their home islands where we'll have 'em make us Godzilla movies and anime from now until kingdom come.
Hooray!
What was I talking about? The Great Raid. U.S. forces have landed on the Philippine Islands, where they have learned that Japan has no intention of letting the U.S. prisoners held at various camps on the islands be rescued alive. Plans are being drawn up for the liberation of these camps, among these camps, Cabanatuan, which holds over 500 prisoners of war. Which brings us nicely to our commanders. Being given this important mission is Lieutenant Colonel Henry Musey, commander of the 6th Ranger Battalion, and the commander of his C Company, Captain Robert Prince, along with his company first sergeant, who I mention simply because he's played by Max Martini, a man who I am convinced was genetically incapable of not being in every U.S. military related movie and TV show from like the mid 90s to like the mid 2010s. Also involved is Captain Juan Pajota of the Filipino guerrillas. On the side of the opposing forces is Major Nagai, who is not a very nice man. Now that that's taken care of, you know what that means. Met TC. Let's begin now. The mission. The Rangers will have to penetrate approximately 25 miles deep inside Japanese territory, where they will link up with friendly Filipino guerrillas and a small group of U.S. Army Alamo Scouts, a proto special operations unit that specializes in reconnaissance. These units will support the Rangers with on the ground intelligence and additional forces for the rescue mission. It is believed that based on intelligence and past practices of the Japanese, if the raid force is discovered en route to the prison camp, the Americans held there will be executed. Secrecy in movement and violence of action while on target will be of paramount importance. The enemy. Intelligence on the exact number of enemy at the camp is changing as the situation evolves. Preliminary numbers suggest the enemy force could number anywhere from 100 to 200. Several miles away, there is a Japanese division, its advanced element near the camp consisting of approximately 1,000 soldiers, separated from the camp by only a small bridge and a river. Japanese soldiers at the camp are primarily armed with the Arisaka bolt-action rifle, the Type 11, and the Type 99 machine guns and mortars. And not to forget a tank. Now, a little confession, there's a gap in my knowledge here. I'm not certain if these tanks in the movie are supposed to be Chi-Ha or Ha-Go tanks. Either way, it's fun to say. If you know, please let me know in the comments and correct my ignorance on the subject of Japanese World War II armor. The Japanese division posted nearby will be similarly armed, just with a lot more of it. The terrain. The Rangers' path to the prison could most quickly be covered by taking vehicles and driving to the camp. However, since detection from the Japanese military is all but inevitable if this route is taken, that effectively limits the Rangers to moving through the Filipino forests and the tall grass fields, as well as a couple water crossings between them and the camp. The camp itself is surrounded by several hundred yards of semi-open terrain, providing limited concealment from the enemy guard towers that surround the camp. Troops. Charlie Company has about 100 Rangers to bring to the fight. They are supported by the Rangers medics, led by the battalion's doctor. The Rangers will link up with a dozen U.S. Alamo Scouts and approximately 300 Filipino guerrillas. 6th Rangers is a specialized light infantry unit, and as such, they have most of the standard U.S. Army equipment of the time, but won't be taking a lot of the heavier weapons that a normal infantry battalion might have at the time, due to their need for speed and maneuverability. The Rangers are armed primarily with the M1 rifle, the lighter M1 carbine, M1911A1 pistols, M1 Thompson submachine guns. Browning automatic rifles serve as their squad automatic weapons, as well as rifle grenades and hand grenades. A bazooka has also been borrowed from the 6th Infantry Division to give the Ranger Company an anti-tank capability. The Filipino guerrillas are armed with U.S. military-issued weapons from right before the war. As such, they are armed with the M1903 bolt-action rifle and the M1928 model Thompson submachine guns. Now, why did I differentiate the model of Tommy guns that the guerrillas are armed with? Well, because I'm overly pedantic, and I think it makes me sound smarter than I really am. For their heavy weapons, the guerrillas are armed with the M1917 water-cooled Browning machine gun and the M1919 air-cooled machine gun, as well as bazookas of their own. Time. As U.S. main body forces get closer to the camp, the threat of the Japanese forces executing the prisoners gets ever higher. As such, operational security is of the highest priority. Any detection by Japanese forces where they are able to alert the camp will necessitate either kicking off the attack then and there or canceling the raid, resulting in mission failure. Inside the camp, the 500 prisoners, while all military members, have been starved and beat down for the last 3 years, and as such are not combat effective by no fault of their own. As such, for the purposes of the mission planning, they can effectively be considered civilians. Also, it should be kept in mind that the prisoners will not all be ambulatory, and as such, some will need to be carried from the scene. Also, be aware that there are several villages between the U.S. lines and Cabanatuan. Filipino civilians in the area are supportive of the U.S. mission. However, their willingness to support the U.S. and the Filipino guerrillas has resulted in reprisals from the Japanese army in the form of burning villages and the massacre of civilians. With all that in mind, let's see how it plays out in the movie. Colonel Musey and Captain Prince receive their mission and begin their movement to the camp. They move in a staggered column, presumably hoping to maximize both speed and security, knowing that time is of the essence. C Company successfully links up with the Alamo Scouts and the Filipino guerrillas under Captain Bahoda's command. The Scouts and the guerrillas give the Rangers additional intelligence of the Japanese army movements and that the camp has probably been reinforced. The Rangers also learned the true nature of the approach to the camp being 800 yards of almost completely open field. They learned that the camp is split into 4 quadrants, with one of those being used as the prisoners' barracks. The commanders make their plans and begin to execute the mission. In anticipation of Japanese counterattack, the guerrillas sabotage the bridge, separating the camp from the other Japanese forces in the area with explosives and set up a blocking force. With the cover of darkness approaching, the Rangers begin high crawling towards the camp. As the Rangers begin their final approach, they get a little air cover requested earlier by Colonel Musey. A Lockheed Hudson then circles overhead in order to divert the attention of the guards away from the Rangers making their final approach. Oh, quick side note. In my research, I found out that apparently the plane used during the real life raid was a P 61 Black Widow. And this aircraft, from what I understand, was chosen for several reasons. One apparently being that the plane's unusual design would be especially distracting for the guards. Also, this Black Widow was part of the Night Fighter Squadron, and it actually stuck around the area and supported the Filipino guerrillas with gun runs against the attacking Japanese forces. And isn't that cool? Anyway, back to the show. With the Rangers now in position in the ditch around the camp, the Rangers wait to kick off the raid. In the movie, Lieutenant Riley is responsible for kicking off the raid, but hesitates, wanting to be sure that everyone else is in position first. I mentioned this not to be critical, but because I get it. I'm an overly cautious person myself, but it brings to light this idea of balancing caution with trusting your buddies to do their jobs so that the raid can be executed at the time that everyone is planning on it in the way that it's supposed to go off. But once positions are confirmed, Lieutenant Riley does his job, taking aim with his M1, and he puts a 30-06 round right through the sentry's off button. From there, the battle is on. The Rangers lay down a base of fire to suppress the Japanese from returning fire or attempting to harm the prisoners. A Ranger moves up to open the main gate, first trying to break the lock by smashing it with the stock of his rifle. Then he draws his 1911 to shoot the lock, followed directly by the pistol being shot from his hand. The Ranger is able to quickly recover his weapon and shoot the lock off. I guess the takeaway from this is that a good Ranger always has alternate breach methods. The Rangers enter the camp and expertly move to their pre established limits of advance to block the enemy forces from moving against the prisoners. The enemy tank lying in wait in the camp's shed attempts to move against the Rangers, but is quickly dispatched by the bazooka team. Over at the bridge, on down the road, the Japanese forces attempt to mount a counterattack, but the bridge is successfully damaged, preventing heavy vehicles from crossing. From there, Japanese infantry directly attack the Filipino guerrillas, but are driven back by the guerrillas' pre-established machine gun positions. Japanese forces then attempt to attack with armor, but those then are disabled by the guerrillas' bazooka. Japanese tanks actually tended to be pretty wimpy compared to most other nations' tanks at the time. Now, they did have their reasons. A lot of the fighting Japan was doing at this time was against the Chinese resistance in places that didn't really comport with employing heavy armor. But then you'd have stuff like this happen, so eh. Back at the camp, the Rangers begin evacuating the POWs. They then take mortar fire from inside the camp. Remembering their react to indirect fire drills, though, everyone drops on the call of mortar. The Rangers are then able to neutralize the enemy mortars. Good job, Rangers. Why, it's almost like you guys specialize in small unit tactics or something. Once everyone is confirmed out, Captain Prince fires a flare to signify the end of the raid. From there, the prisoners are evacuated back to friendly lines. This is done by using carts provided by the local populace. And so, the battle ends, with the Japanese defeated and the prisoners returned to freedom. The Rangers have 3 men killed, and the Filipino guerrillas suffer approximately 2 dozen men KIA. All POWs are brought back to freedom, except for a few, which tragically were in too poor of condition and were not able to survive the trip back to friendly lines. Japanese casualties were believed to be around 500. And that, friends, is the Hollywood telling of the raid on the Cabanatuan prison camp. I reiterate that this has just been my analysis of the on screen battle, and I implore you to learn more about the real heroes for yourself. Oh, P.S. The maps of the approach to the camp that I used, I shamelessly stole those from arsofhistory.org. So all credit goes to them for those. They were a fantastic resource. I leave you now with the question we always do here on Military Movie Talk. If you found yourself in the movie as the leader of the Rangers, how would you have executed the mission? Would you have tried to sneak trucks through to help with the evac? Would you have brought different weapons? Would you have tried something completely different, like a glider or airborne assault? Let me know, and of course, discuss amongst yourselves. Until next time, armchair commanders, see ya.